Hello, this is an open letter to the Right Honourable Nadhim Zahawi. It's entitled Academies Are Above the Law. Over the last 2 years, I've tried to raise concerns about an academy, but every single organisation I've approached has essentially told me it's not their problem. This includes Ofsted, the LA, the LGO, Local Government Ombudsman, the ESFA, the DFE, and the RSC. Despite these concerns, none of these bodies was interested. These bodies are uninterested in SEND issues, that's special educational needs and disabilities, health and safety, safeguarding, bullying, and many other damaging issues. I have included the edited correspondence here, so there should be no doubt by the end of this that academies are above the law. There is literally nowhere to take these concerns. Not a single body in the country is interested in what goes on in academies. First of all, the Academy. I firstly engaged with the Academy itself following their complaints procedure. I'd previously discovered that complaints went unanswered unless they were sent by email or recorded delivery, so I ensured that they did so. It took 8 months to go through the various steps of the complaints procedure, which also required me to prompt the Academy to get a meeting with the local Academy board. At the end of the process, they essentially said they didn't feel anything was wrong with the way issues were handled and gave a very generic response. They concluded that the only issue was the, quotes, lack of prompt communication, despite a number of issues raised. So I turned my attention to government bodies. First of all, Ofsted. So Ofsted will not entertain complaints from parents unless they are of a serious nature and are regarding the Academy's leadership and whether they need to inspect early. Their boilerplate response makes this quite clear, and I quote, Ofsted has limited legal powers to consider complaints about schools. Furthermore, you should note that Ofsted is not the regulator of schools, but only the inspectorate. The purpose of Ofsted's legal powers when considering complaints about schools is to determine if there is a need to inspect the school at an early point. Now, it should be noted that when I sent this letter to Ofsted, the academy in question had not been inspected in 9 years, and the leadership at the time had never been inspected. So much for Ofsted. In fact, when I raised a safeguarding concern with Ofsted, they merely forwarded it to the local authority. That's page 2 of the correspondence. The local authority. So a number of people seem to be under the illusion that the local authority have powers over academies, particularly in respect to safeguarding. Now, this couldn't be further from the truth. Local authorities have no control over academies, as their response confirms. I quote, you have raised concerns about risk assessments, health and safety, bullying and potential off-rolling. All 8 of these concerns relate directly to the academy practice and are areas that the academy holds the legal responsibility for. As such, these concerns cannot be addressed by the local authority. The complaints should be made directly to the school following the academy's complaints procedure. If you are not satisfied with the academy response, once the complaints procedure has been followed, you can refer your concerns to the Education Skills Funding Agency, ESFA. So I wasn't quite happy with that, so when I contacted the LGO, that's the Local Government Ombudsman, to complain about the local authority's lack of interest in the academy, my contact there simply confirmed the LA's position. And I quote, I am not investigating Mr. C's concerns about how the council dealt with the actions of the school in terms of safeguarding, exclusions and compliance with special educational needs guidance. That is because the school attended by Mr. C's son is an academy school and the council has no control over these schools. When I phoned the lady handling the investigation, she confirmed the actions of the school are outside the Ombudsman's jurisdiction anyway, and that goes for all schools, not just academy schools. Councils don't have any control over internal management within academies because they're funded by the government. When I asked if councils are responsible in any way for academies, she replied, no. The whole point of them being set up is that they are completely outside of local authority control. So much for the LA. The Department for Education. Since it was clear that academies fell under central government, I decided to try the DFE. Their response was at least quick. Going to the website and entering in the complaint with the option, I'm not satisfied with the outcome, of a complaint that is, it comes back with a very quick rebuttal. Sorry, we can't help you at this stage. We cannot change an Academy's decision about a complaint. Our role is to make sure the Academy handles your complaint properly by following a published procedure. We may be able to help if you are unable to complain or are not satisfied with how your complaint was handled because the Academy doesn't have a complaints policy, etc. So the DFE is not interested in the outcome of a complaint at all. Even if I had recorded proof that a teacher had bullied a pupil or the Academy had ignored SEND needs, etc., the DFA simply doesn't care. As it says there, we cannot change an Academy's decision about a complaint. So much for the DFE. Next is the Education and Skills Funding Agency. Now, the ESFA's response was almost identical to that of the DFE. They also have no interest in how safe our children are in school. And I quote, I need to let you know that the Education and Skills Funding Agency is unable to look into your complaint further because we can only investigate complaints that have not followed the Academy's complaints procedure. Pretty much the same as the DFE. The quote there is further up that page. Although they claim they take safeguarding seriously, their only action was to contact the Academy and ask about their arrangements. No investigation, nothing of that nature. I quote, I have referred these aspects of your complaint to colleagues who will contact the Academy and trust about their safeguarding arrangements. This is not enforcement, this is box ticking. So much for the ESFA. Now, for completeness sake, I also contacted the Regional Schools Commissioner, the RSC. Their response was on ESFA letter-headed paper and simply echoed the ESFA. And I quote, it has been passed the Education and Skills Funding Agency, ESFA, as the regulatory body for Academy safeguarding and child protection policies. Our role is to consider whether a trust or Academy's safeguarding and child protection policies are implemented effectively and compliant in line with the regulations. We understand that you have previously raised this with ESFA in November 2020, and we were content with the reassurances received at the time as a result of the complaint. We do not routinely inform complainants of actions taken directly with Academies. As this matter has been concluded, we consider the case closed. So, the RSC passed the complaint to the ESFA, who only investigate complaints that have not followed the Academy's complaints procedure. That's in the ESFA's own words. So there doesn't seem much point in passing any concerns to them either. So much for the RSC. And that essentially exhausted my possible lines of inquiry to government bodies. So I therefore conclude that Academies are above the law. Whenever I ask any of the bodies which is the proper body to report a safeguarding concern to, the response is always, we can't comment on that. In theory, safeguarding is everyone's responsibility. In practice, it is no one's. Although in theory, the ESFA handles safeguarding, in practice, they do very little. And Ofsted still refers safeguarding concerns to the LA. Beyond the Academy itself, there is no oversight in the education sector anymore, even for a matter as serious as safeguarding. This doesn't feel like it's an accident. So, Academies, which are profit-making organisations, and which we have no choice but to send our children to, and pay our taxes to, even if we were to deregister, have no oversight. I cannot think of another profit-making organisation with so little accountability. I can guess that you will respond that there is a boatload of legislation for safeguarding children, etc., but the fact remains that no one enforces this legislation. This legislation is just so much toilet paper to the Academies because they know with certainty that no one will ever call them to account with it. I expect you will draw my attention to the legislation regarding discrimination regarding SEND, except this requires members of the public to hire solicitors, fight the council and or Academy to get what their child is entitled to under law. How many parents have the knowledge of the law, the funds and the willpower to wage a legal battle for years? These are effectively only laws for the rich. Maybe you will deny that they are profit-making organisations, even though the executive board can pay themselves or their friends whatever salaries they wish, pay out for consultancy fees, and control who all the estate's work and uniforms supply for the academies and their control goes to. The opportunity for entrepreneurial administration is clearly available. Recently, the School Uniforms Bill was passed in an effort to make uniforms more affordable and was applauded widely. But when I asked the Right Honourable Nick Gibb MP who would enforce this, he responded it would be the DfE. The DfE, the same DfE who state, and I quote, "We cannot change an academy's decision about a complaint." They actually enforce nothing. I expect you will also try to pretend that academies have increased the quality of education. However, according to fullfact.org, and I quote, "Evidence on the performance of academies compared to local authority schools is mixed, but on the whole suggests there is no substantial difference in performance." Likely you will ignore skyrocketing rates of deregistration and the current mental health emergency amongst children, and vehemently choose not to connect the epidemic of anxiety with their schooling. In short, our children are at the mercy of academies. They can exclude, off-roll, bully, ignore safeguarding or health and safety, and then pay themselves large salaries or fees to a company which we then consult for after leaving the academy, like the executive head Liam Nolan, who was found guilty of unprofessional conduct after paying himself £160,000 on top of his regular salary as executive head before eventually resigning. Regarding the new schools bill, you state, and I quote, "My mission is clear. I want to make sure every single child across our country has access to an excellent education, supporting them to reach the full height of their potential. Between the strengthened safeguarding measures and greater accountability, our new schools bill and our schools white paper ambitions to embed evidence, tutoring and excellent teacher training in the school system, I am confident we will achieve those ambitions for every child." Greater accountability. There is no accountability, as I'm sure anyone listening to this should know by now. Without oversight and measures designed to promote quality, the education system will continue to produce poor results and simply pander to statistics by off-rolling those requiring extra help. Schools are now more concerned with logo uniforms than they are with their students' mental health or their SEND needs. Excellent teacher training? It is entirely possible for teachers in the classroom to have no teaching qualifications. Simply search for unqualified teacher or cover supervisor on any job site, and you'll find hundreds of such jobs. One part of the latest schools bill is driving attendance, and yet it addresses the symptoms only and not the cause. One cause of lack of attendance in children is unmet SEND needs, especially SEM, social, emotional and mental health. This can often be down to the school not supporting their emotional SEND needs in school. It is often the case that unless there is an EHCP in place, and most SEMH needs do not qualify, the school can choose to ignore the regulations due to lack of enforcement, and so the child goes unsupported, and school refusal can sometimes be the outcome. A school can simply list the child as being educated off-site and give them a substandard online teaching app and never notify the LA. So the child is now at home being effectively uneducated and invisible to the LA. Your new bill ignores SEND completely and yet again seeks to persecute parents and give the academies a free pass to forget all about their responsibilities. You fail to ask why children are not attending school. Finally, there was an article in a newspaper recently whereby an academy had barred some pupils from the end of year prom for reasons such as poor behaviour or poor attendance, and the parents were understandably angry, but there was no recourse. The truth of the matter is that the academy could have barred them because they didn't like their haircuts, or because their name began with the letter A, or they were from a poor estate. Even then there would be no recourse. A canopy could even be so brazen as to bar them because they're in a wheelchair, because they're black or Muslim, Although this would of course fall under discrimination law, the Academy could simply change their story if they wished and denied having ever said such a thing. The success of such a case isn't something I could comment on. But it is true that in any of these cases, none of the education bodies would be interested. Ofsted wouldn't care because they're an inspection body, not regulatory. The LA wouldn't be interested because they have no legal power over academies. The DFE and ESFA wouldn't care because they, and I quote, only investigate complaints that have not followed the Academy's complaints procedure. And the RSC, well, that just echoes the ESFA. No one in any of these bodies is the slightest bit interested in this kind of irregular behaviour by an academy, or unmet SEND needs, or bullying by the students, or even teachers. In every case, even if there's an act of law which protects our children, it is up to the parents to enforce it. This costs thousands of pounds and can take years to bring. Academies, meanwhile, often have legal insurance and plenty of money in the bank. And if the parents lose, they find themselves with a 5-figure bill. And this is why I say, academies are above the law. I don't expect a response from you, and if I did receive one, I expect it would be simply repeat the same tired old platitudes, or simply be copy and pasted from the DFE website. So please don't feel like you have to make the effort. After all, since there's no accountability for academies, why should we expect any for the MPs who created them? Thank you for your time.